Well, hello everyone in the Barebow world. Thanks for tuning in. This is episode 139 with Dick Tone, Coach Dick Tone, one of the most experienced and long-standing coaches in the archery game. Um, but I'm sharing the Barebow bulletin for March because apparently, before we dive into this episode, we struck a chord with a few people, which is good. That's not a bad thing. Anything that generates conversation for archery, especially barebow, is a good thing. Once again, congratulations to Joel for a stellar performance at the Vegas shoot. Um, this article was just a little bit of a comparison to the triggered versus non-triggered shot process. And the idea of shooting a seer is what spearheaded the conversation with Dick about kind of the history of target archery and barebow in general. We talk about all archery, but just because I had asked him, like, hey, when did the seer idea start? Um, which I come to find out that it was a long time ago, long before I was born. But I just wanted to share, tune into the Barebow project for future episodes about this topic. More importantly, go to the website and subscribe, www.thebarebowproject.com, and subscribe to the newsletter for free, because this month coming up, you're not going to want to miss. John Demmer is writing an article about the non-triggered shot process and essentially the way that he implements it and what's going on there. And Joel Turner, who was invited to do this, both of them, is writing about the triggered shot process, shooting a seer, the process of implementing it, and stuff like that. And I'm excited for that because it's rare in the same instance do you get two people who are essentially experts in that the teaching and the implementation of what works for them in the same place to be able to read their words and understand it from their words. So make sure you check it out, but do not get the message confused about the article um, saying that one's better than the other. There's obviously a transition and improvement in the amount of people that are shooting a sear system. And I can see the benefits of it, especially if you're somebody who, struggles with target panic. I can see how, in some ways, it can definitely help. So don't act or take as though um, if you shoot a seer, you're lesser of an archer or cheating or violating rules or anything like that, because that's just not the case. And you've heard it here directly from me. I just want to make that known. Um, I'm happy for Joel. I think that Joel's a great guy. I think that his efforts to improve and grow archery have been extremely beneficial to barebow and traditional archery across the board, and as well as compound with his shot IQ and the success of his son, um, so on and so forth. So in no way is there any negative implication on what Joel is teaching or doing. As long as it works for someone, then they should do it if that makes them happy. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But thanks again for logging in and watching and listening to the Barrel Project. Watch out for next month's newsletter. You're not going to want to miss it. Enjoy this episode. Peace out.
Hey everybody, this is PJ Riley from Competition Archery Media.
My name is Hugo Lowe.
Hello, I'm Christina Percoli from San Marino.
Greetings, this is Jay Barsh from the 107 Club.
I'm Ryan, I'm with Anchorpoint Archery in Goodyear, Arizona.
We are the Community Barebow! This is for the Barebow Project! Go Barebow!
This is
the Barebow Project!
And this is the Barebow Project.
No, and this is the Barebow Project.
And you're watching the Barebow Project.
And you're watching the Barebow Project.
I'm Grayson Partlow, and this is the Barebow Project. I think that was an 8.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Barebow Project. I am joined with my special guest and friend, archery coach extraordinaire, Mr. Dick Tone. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great.
Um, so funny story. I was writing an article for the Barebow Bulletin and I needed to do some historical research, we'll call it. And I called my good friend and we were chatting a little bit and then before you know it, we got into just like a discussion about really just like historical stuff of target archery. And I called him about asking him about the sear because I wrote the article about triggered versus non-triggered shots for Barebow. Um, apparently, it was a love-hate relationship with that article for some people. Whatever, no offense, it wasn't meant for you to go choose one or the other. It was just diving into some of the details around both of them. But anyways, and I asked Dick, I was like, hey, I was like, is the sear something that's been used prior for years or something? And that's really what spearheaded this conversation. And we could start with that. We can talk about like how competition archery was, but that turned into like Dick shooting recurve against compound shooters with release aids and all this stuff. So I think what we'll do is we'll touch upon the sear thing, but let's just go back to Dick. When did you start shooting competitive archery? Um, and what was it like then? Like classes, equipment, all that stuff.
Well, when I started shooting, uh, they would just started putting fiberglass on the limbs, and I was in Phoenix, Arizona, and I joined a field archery club called Sun Valley Bowhunters, and my parents would drop me off there Sunday after church and pick me up at dark, you know. And so I got to know people like Al Henderson and people that belonged to the club, and just about everybody there that I know of shot barebow. I mean, there were no sights. Never saw a sight.
You
Right.
probably didn't see sights or stabilizers or anything. It was just wooden bows or
Well, I did have a Gordon Page.
okay.
Gordon Gordon made bows, and then they sold their bow operation to Browning.
Okay.
Okay.
I shot
So,
Browning.
yeah. So I had a Gordon Page. They had Gordon Page and Queen and Knight and all that kind of stuff. And it was a 40-pound bow and like a semi recurve. Wasn't a lot, but it was a lot to me.
Right.
It was much better than the oleander bushes. you know. So anyway, um, we moved to Canada in 1958. My dad was with State Farm, and they moved him up there to start State Farm in Canada.
Wow.
So he was the vice president of Canadian operations. And, my next door neighbor and I would, play hockey and all that kind of stuff. And I got him interested in shooting bows and arrows. And right across the street from us was a big ravine, and we'd go there every day and all weekends and just shoot at whatever moved or didn't move.
Yeah.
So that was it. That's what we did.
That's cool.
And we were climbing out of there one day, and the guy drove by and stopped, and he says, "You guys like bows and arrows?" He's, "We have a target archery club right over here. You should come try it out." I said, "Well, where is it? And when are you going to be there?" And they told me, and my neighbor wasn't interested, but I went over there, and here's these guys and gals standing there in one spot, shooting at these huge, big, round targets
Mhm.
at a known distance. And I thought, how hard can this be? you
Yeah, I
know,
know. So we're talking 1958, 1960, somewhere in there.
1960.
Okay.
Okay. Um, and so anyway, I joined the club and soon found out that the reason they could hit the target is they had sights. Okay. Well, I'm a corner of the mouth guy, and want to put a sight on, you can't get a lot of distance.
Right.
So they had what they call a prism sight,
Okay.
which deflected your view. So with a prism, I could shoot any distance, and that's what I shot.
Okay.
And
And you were shooting
about,
just recurve with fingers at this point, right?
oh,
There were no compounds yet.
no, really, compounds were a long
Yeah,
time.
we'll get into that if depending on how in depth the conversation goes, either part one or part two, we'll get into that because we talked a little bit about that the other day as well.
Anyway, a few months later, I went to the local Ontario provincial target championship and shooting junior division, and some hot shots going to supposed to win the thing and all that kind of stuff. After the first day, I was 50 points ahead,
Oh wow.
and I added another 100 to it the next day. And for 6 years, I shot in Canada. I was second once
Wow.
because it was a feeder round and they didn't allow me to use a prism.
So that feeder round is the equivalent to what USA Archery is now, but back in the day, was that NAA?
That was NAA, and back in the day, it was controlled by the Federation of International Target Archers, which is now
Right.
World,
World
World
Archery.
Archery.
Yep. Okay. Because when I came into the sport, I was still part of NAA. USA Archery wasn't a thing. I think it was all NAA and the international. It wasn't an International Field Archery Association, or was that different?
Now, the NFA was around,
Yeah.
okay, but they started in the 40s.
Okay.
And, I belonged to a field archery club up there also. Um, and for the national championships in 1964, um, they shot 2 days of target,
Mm-hmm.
which included a feeder round and a Canadian round or something like that. And then they had a day of archery golf and clout and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
then they had 2 days of field. So we ended up to have a target champion, a field champion, and an overall champion.
Okay. Wow.
So I won by 400 points.
That's even more impressive. I do like the idea of having an overall champion, though. I think that's a great.
And I mean, the last day I didn't have to shoot, I guess. I mean, it was that,
Crazy.
it was crazy.
Yeah.
So shortly after that, I ended up back in the United States, and going to Phoenix College, and I was going to try out for the U.S. team, which was the World Championships were in Västerås, Sweden that year. So anyway, I tried out for the team and made it, and ended up going to the World Championship. At that World Championships, the FIDE Congress was trying to decide whether or not they're to allow stabilizers
Okay.
and
Wow.
or a peep sight or a bubble.
All on recurve.
Right. They were, and I was shooting a stabilizer, and it was like 18 inches long, solid aluminum rod with a weight on the end. That's
Mhm.
it. And that was considered radical. Okay.
Mhm.
And anyway, uh, I was I practiced with it. Some people that had stabilizers took them off. They were sure that it wasn't going to be allowed, and well, they ended up allowing it.
Oh wow.
Okay, so that was the first time they allowed stabilizers
What was the
in
approximate year of that?
what was 1964,
It was
the
around
60,
64.
65 World Championship.
Okay. All right.
No, all right,
So they
and
allowed stable. So prior to the competition, stabilizers weren't a thing at all. And
no,
then multiple archers showed up with stabilizers and there was like a big review and the judges at that time just said, "Yeah, sure, we're gonna let it go."
and well, Hoyt had two little stabilizers on his bows in the about 63, 64, somewhere in that area. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I didn't have money for a Hoyt. I was shooting a Starflight made by a Canadian guy. And so I made my own stabilizers.
Easy
Okay.
enough. Yeah.
We had we had some Brasso in the house, which is a little can that had polished brass with and stuff. And I took two of those cans, emptied them out, and I took the lid and started it on a metal piece, taped them on the top and bottom of my bow and the riser, and I went down to the creek and filled them up with water, and that was my stabilizers.
That's wild. I mean,
All
but
right.
it's not out of the ordinary from what I recall from like the 80s. You know, you had different dimensions and lengths of stabilizers. They tried hydraulic oil, they had water, they had all kinds of different, you know, they were baffled and all kinds of different types of
Yep.
systems. So, you know, to go and even like the standard aluminum rod was around well into the 80s. The standard aluminum, Easton aluminum rod with a weight on the end. Nothing in it, just an aluminum rod. That's all it was. Even going into sidebars and stuff like that, V bars and whatnot. But
Well,
so you were a DIY stabilizer guy to start. Did it all yourself.
and the funny thing is, uh, in 1967, I was working for Easton, and back,
Mhm.
even up to then, the stabilizers hadn't advanced much. And when they made arrows back then, they start with a piece about an inch in diameter,
Right.
and it would draw it down and heat treat it, needle it, draw it down 6 to 8 times. Okay, depending on the size. And I was watching her draw some X7 material,
Hmm.
and I got 3 or 4 pieces of it, and they were probably half-inch diameter, a little smaller, and got my guys in the machine shop to put inserts in them
Yeah.
and made a bunch of stabilizers. All right, so I could test different lengths. These were tubular aluminum Easton stabilizers with
Hmm.
a ball in the end, and it was so much better than that old standard rod.
It's
And
funny.
I anodized one and put Easton Sport Shaft on it, which was what the ski poles were, and went to the Vegas, the Coble Hall shoot that year. And since I was one of the top shooters, people always going to see what you're doing. And it took maybe 5 minutes for Earl Hoyt to show up because he had the patent on stabilizers. And he walked up and he says, "What do you got?" And I showed him. He says, "Well, that's interesting. How's it work?" And I told him my theories on it and
Yeah.
everything. And he says, "Oh, okay. I have the patent on that." And I says, "Yeah, I know. This is just a prototype. We're not making them. When I get back to work on Monday morning, I get Jim Easton come to my office and
Hmm.
bring your bow. I get there and Jim says, "Let me see that stabilizer." And I showed it to him and he says, "What is it made out of?" I was X7. And he says, "All right." I said, "What's the deal? What's the problem?" He said, "No problem." He says, "I just want to know what we're making because I got a big order from Hoyt."
Oh my God, no way.
That's how it started.
So, so what was what did the stabilizer they have had? So that we're talking what? We're late 60s at this point, right? Late 60s.
67. Yeah.
And what did their stabilizer look like at that point in time? Was it the same thing or was it just shorter or what was it?
His patent was on a stabilizer that extended from the bow, basically. Oh, and I don't have a copy of the patent, but it was pretty well known that there were a lot of people that had stabilizers before it got patented.
Right, okay, gotcha. So, but your inventive mind grabbed the extra material from the X7 arrow shafts You put threaded inserts on both ends, one that would go into the stabilizer bushing, and one that would take American standard, the little ball weight, which I remember shooting one of those stabilizers when I was a kid. It's one of my first ones. And that started this evolution in the target archery equipment. We're talking single piece or three piece recurves.
These are all single piece
These are all
recurve,
single piece at that point, right? Yeah,
and
okay.
nobody had a hole in their riser for a stabilizer except for Hoyt, and they had two, top and bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And I was shooting American archery, and you'd have to clamp that thing in a drill press and line it all up and see if you can get it straight before you drill the hole in it, and then
Right.
put an inch in there. Yeah. So a lot of it was not perfect, but we got stabilizers. You know?
That's wild. So you take that, put a glue in insert inside of a wooden riser, one piece recurve bow
Yeah.
with a sight, and then that would be the competition to the Hoyt at that point in time.
And there were no side extensions at that time.
Yeah, they were
Everything
all right to the riser, right?
right, either front or back, mainly the back of the riser or the, you know,
Because of
what you
distance. Yep.
when you belly because you got to get the distance, you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
You shoot.
there's gonna be there's gonna be a lot of barebow people that will listen to this, and it's gonna be a foreign concept. Like the fact that it used to be a 90-meter round, a lot of people don't know. The fact that
Yeah,
people used to have to take their sights before we had sight bars, they would be bolted on the back of the riser so that the pins were closer to you so that you can get a further distance. You have one?
yeah.
Nice little collection on the wall.
Here's
Okay.
the bow. Here's the bow I shot at in Canada.
Okay. Yes. Oh, look at that.
Riser,
Yeah.
one on top, one on the
That's so
bottom.
cool. That's people, you're looking at archery, like literal archery history right here.
There's a
The sight,
sight.
yeah, the bolt-on sight.
A guy named Clarence Shred made that for me. It was Canadian champion 61 or something.
I had
And
a Cobra sight. So that was before like when I shot my first bow was a Hoyt Polaris, I think. I don't know if you
mhm.
remember that bow. And the first sight I had was a Cobra, and it had that exact same setup on it, except it had like it was the original when they made them like it was like a one-piece bracket that had the sight housing on the front, but it was the exact same concept. Single
You
pin.
like- you see, there was no cushion plungers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just a brush rest, and you had to shoot hard vanes off that
Yeah.
because there were no soft vanes.
Mm-hmm.
You either shot feathers or hard vanes, and most people shot feathers. And I figured out how to shoot the hard vanes, and that gave me a big advantage. So that was the bow. Um, I shot my first 500 field with that, and
Incredible.
back in the day, um, I went to when I first tried this. This is before the nationals in the '64. I went to the Hamilton Mud Shoot, Hamilton, Ontario,
Okay.
and it was you call it the mud shoot because it's in May and
Mm-hmm.
it's muddy. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I had these on the bow and I hadn't painted them black. They still said Brasso on them, right? I filled them full of water, went out and shot the first 500 ever in Canada, and the town sold out of Brasso.
That's funny. That is
So
funny.
anyway, that's the bow right there.
That's so cool. So we're starting to, I guess at this point we're knocking on the 1970s. Target archery's in full swing.
Yep.
It's that's your standard piece of equipment. Stabilizers have come into place. Easton
Mhm.
starts making stabilizers for Hoyt. What comes after that?
Well, then they started making two-piece bows. There was a metal handle uh, three-piece bow made by what's the name of it? I'll think of it anyway. And that was in the 50s. Okay. But
Okay.
it never caught on. Yeah, there's a few of them, the Grimes bow.
Okay.
They made an all metal one and they made a metal handle, aluminum handle with laminated limbs. So I had one, I gave it to Rob for his collection.
Mm.
So
Is it at the
anyway,
shop, in the collection at the shop?
yeah,
Yeah, for those of you, and I'm maybe this there might be some others. If you haven't gotten to Lancaster Archery, if you come to Lancaster Archery Classic, you want to go into the satellite range that's next door because there's a whole cabinet that's just full of archery history. Apparently, some of which is from Dick Tone's collection at Lancaster
I
Archery Supply. It's a very
actually made a
impressive
few.
collection.
I actually made a few of the bows that are in that thing.
Really?
Yeah. So
Well, you've had your hands in on multiple product innovations over the years, still to this day, obviously, because your tabs are the DXC tab is advertised on the Bulletin every month. Anyway, shameless plug. Um, but so all right, so we're shooting just to get back on track. The equipment wise, are we shooting finger tabs yet?
yeah, oh yeah, finger tabs have been around forever. You know, a
Mm,
lot of guys shot a glove, but finger tabs have been around forever. And back then, I was in working for Easton. I was in California, and I met a guy named John Williamson. Okay,
okay.
not John
I
Williams.
was gonna say John Williams is the first Olympic medalist for the United States,
Not
right?
him. John Williamson.
Okay.
Okay. John was a dancer. He had a dance group out of Sacramento. He lived in the LA area and Hollywood, yeah, North Hollywood. Anyway, he was traveling with his group in Missouri and he was injured from doing a double pirouette or something. And he was sitting there not able to dance. He was reading the paper and he saw an advertisement for uh, a patent on what Hollis Allen called a compound bow. And he thought, well, that's interesting. I got time. I'm going to go see this guy. So he went over there. And before he left, he made a deal with him. He got a sample and he got exclusive rights to that patent for 2 years. Okay. So now he's got the bow and he gets home and he lives in North Hollywood. He's thinking, what am I going to do with this? You know, I don't know how to shoot it. I don't know anything about it. He says, let me look. And he get the yellow pages out and he finds an archery shop in North Hollywood called S&J Archery.
Okay.
That would be Smithwick and Jennings.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
Smithwick was the Boyer, and he had some great recurves, the Smithwick citation and all that. So they had all the equipment there. Unfortunately, Smithwick had passed away, and um, Tom Jennings wasn't much of a bow maker, but he had an archery shop. So John Williamson goes down there with this thing and he says, tell me about this. And of course, you know, Tom's looking at it like just a piece of junk. And he says, I want to make some of these. And he said, well, I'm not interested. He says, well, if I bring some of my guys in here, can I use some of your equipment that you're not using? And Tom says, all right. So he did. And he redid it a little bit. It was a six wheel and ended up being a four wheel when they got done with it. And a big, bulky wood handle with side plates on it. And it was
I've seen
something.
them. Yeah.
And anyway, he started shooting that. Back then, everybody was shooting with with fingers in a
Hmm.
compound.
Hmm.
Okay. And I got to know him and shot a lot with him. And he was a really good shot. He was also a loudmouth. And he would brag and tell people how good he was and all this and that. And we were going to the state field up in San Francisco, and I was riding with him. And I told him, I said, John, you need to kind of not brag so much. I says, we don't know. I mean, you're the best amateur out there. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen, but you're shooting feathers and it rains in San Francisco and your arrows are going to come out going sideways. So, yeah, just keep it under wraps, which he did. And he ended up being second or third because of that. And he was so pissed driving home because you couldn't shoot
I love it.
a hard vein out of a big old handle like that.
Sure.
We went right to the shop and went out in the alley, had a target, and it took me 3 hours to fix that bow so you could shoot veins off it.
Hmm.
Okay.
What was he shoot? Was he shooting off of like a springy rest, or what was he shooting? Was it just a hard, a regular hard plastic rest? What was it?
Well, um, cushion plungers had started, but
Okay.
they weren't really good. All right. So it was the basic problem with it is it wasn't cut past center.
Hmm.
Okay. And when you shoot a compound, the arrow starts out slower
Hmm.
and then picks up speed. And even back then, it was like maybe 20% let off. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, so it didn't bend the arrows the same.
Right.
And, and you had to shoot a lot lighter arrow spine. And it's just a lot of the things we learned as we messed with this thing to get it to work. The, the, the interesting part about the cushion plunger is a guy named Norm Pint invented it.
Interesting.
And he was from Iowa. He and his wife had an archery shop there. And Norm came out to Arizona for the NAA Nationals in Arizona, as you imagine that, in
Mm.
August.
Mm.
But it was in Flagstaff,
Okay.
cooler. All right.
Yeah.
Anyway, he came out with this thing, and it was called the panic button.
Okay. Yeah.
Because when shooting, if you make a mistake, you kind of panic, it would correct some of that. Okay. I have
Mm.
one of the original ones, and I've actually written an article on that. But anyway, a little later on, a year or so later, a guy named Vic Berger came out with his version,
Hmm.
and he never paid Norm, which was bad, not good. I love Vic to death, but he should have been paying him, the royalty.
Yeah.
When we came out with a cushion plunger, that's the first person I called because Norm was a good friend. I said, "Hey, we're going to do a plunger. What's your royalty and this and that?" So anyway, so that's how cushion plunger started. And you imagine a beautiful rosewood handle bow that's just pristine, and you're going to lay it on the ground and put a big hole in it. So put one of these things in it.
I was just thinking to myself, when did when did it become customary to put a burger hole in all of the bows?
Yeah, it's not a burger hole. It's a
Okay.
cushion plunger hole.
It's described as a burger hole in my
Well,
experience. Doesn't mean it's correct.
everybody doesn't know. Okay, everybody
Myself
thinks
included.
everybody thinks Vic Berger invented it. I'm working with a guy that's one of the modern bow hunters, and he was convinced that Fred Bear and he was the guy that invented the compound.
Oh, really? Well,
So
even like
that's
that.
how things get changed.
Yeah.
Anyway, um, getting back to the compound, um, after 2 years, and when their exclusivity ran out, Allen started allowing one manufacturer per state. Okay, and they would sign up to do this, right? Well, by that time, Tom Jennings is pretty excited because he wants to keep the market, if you will.
Sure.
And so he and Hollis had an argument, and Jennings quit paying. Okay, and there was a big lawsuit, and every manufacturer that was making a compound bow had to make a decision, either pay or don't pay, because we don't know how the lawsuit's going to come out. At the time, I was running Ben Pearson, so we put the money in escrow. Okay, make a little money on it, waiting. People like PSE did not, and other companies did not, and of course, Tom Jennings did not. And Hollis Allen won the lawsuit, and we paid up, and PSE almost went down, really close. Jennings did go down. It was sold to Bear by 10 cents on the dollar.
Oh, wow.
And so it was a big deal. And it was like 50 cents or $1 a bow. That's all it was.
That's not a lot.
But
Back then
when
it was.
well, back then, I mean, you got companies that are putting out, 10,000 bows.
Right. Right.
You know,
Yeah.
there's a big difference. Anyway, um, that what happened on that stuff. So after the stabilizers and now the sights are starting to get extensions, and we got cushion plungers, and we got all this stuff that's helping to target archery. Along come the releases. All right. So
What's
now we
the
have
approximate time frame of that?
this was in the about 68, that type of thing, because compounds were easier to shoot with a release than your fingers, right?
Right. Right.
And so there was a big fight, okay, over the people who wanted to shoot traditional fingers, recurve, against the compounds, and the compound release and all this stuff. And it tore the everybody in part. You were either for it or against it. It's almost like politics, and it was politics.
Well, it's
Now,
funny you say that because there's a similar um I actually it's not real, it's fabricated. But there's this like the whole like with Barebow even this shooting a sear like a triggered shot, not shooting a triggered shot, blah 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 blah. That seems to be like it's even similar with bow companies. Like, oh, you shoot a Hoyt or in the barebow world, or you shoot a CD or you shoot a G-Low or whatever. Like there's this there's such volatile conversations around like what bow you shoot and what it means. It's even like that in a compound, to be honest with you.
yeah,
Limper recurve is sort of its own little world, but it's just so strange. But anyway, so at this point in time, I do have a question before we kind of dive into like the release aids and the implementation of that, because we talked a little bit about that the other day when we were on the phone. But I do have a question just in regards to like when did the classes shift? Like when was there always a class for no sights considered like a barebow traditional class, or did
up
that
until
come later on, or how did that work?
you can look at the NFA, probably get the timeline on it, but for many many years, even after sights and stabilizers and all that came up, the the person who was considered the NFA champion was the guy shooting barebow.
Okay,
Okay.
interesting. So
Now,
despite other classes,
the barebow was the guy that won.
Interesting. So they only crowned one national champion at that time?
Well, they had division champions, but he was the only guy and gal. They were the only national champions. If you,
Wow.
look, you talk to Bruce Cullen, he'd probably give you the timeline on that. But
Bruce is a
it,
hard man to corner. So, but yeah, I can do that.
yeah,
I'll give him a shout.
but it was interesting. Um, we never had pro classes or anything like that until kind of in the 70s. Um, I think it was 71. I was shooting the state field here with a recurve and a release.
Yes, we talked about this.
Okay. And shooting against the compounds. Okay. Um, there was no distinction of compound division or recurve division or anything like that. So,
Yeah, it's all combined then.
yeah.
Imagine imagine um the fallout if people had to shoot against all of the other classes and all like everything. Like in today's world, there's a class, I swear, for every minute change in like NFAA. But to go back to like those years and realize like recurve was shooting against compound and I don't know, crossbows probably entered somewhere in the 70s, I think, too, to target archery as well, which that since kind of fell by the wayside. But
Yeah. If they want to make it a fun competitive thing, they could say, okay, well, you guys can shoot your compounds, but you have to shoot with your fingers and
yeah,
no scope and
yeah,
no peep sight.
yeah, for sure. For sure. Very few people have shot compound with no sight and fingers.
I'll send you a picture.
Okay. What are you sending me a picture of?
Oh, damn, that's not it.
I know I know that, this was like mid 80s. Oh, is this you?
Yeah, you notice I'm shooting a recurve and a
Yeah.
release.
Back tension release?
No, it's a ledge release.
What's that?
Okay, all it is a piece of plastic, in this case aluminum, with a ledge on it, and you pull it with one finger, and you get the other one on there, and you twist it off.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So it's
There,
like a hinge almost?
no hinge.
No.
I mean, just a one piece deal. That's it.
Crazy. And that's on the string itself?
On the string right below the arrow.
Yeah, okay. That's wild. I'm gonna put
You
that
see
in
the
this episode when we do it.
see the guy behind me?
Yeah, who's that?
Now he's shooting a compound.
Yeah, I see that. I see that. Yeah. The little tiny the small wheels.
Yep.
I
Yep.
remember
Was
all too
Jennings
well. That was a
shooting at
Jennings.
Jennings. Yeah.
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 Jennings was a big bow brand in the 80s, probably 80s into early 90s.
Yes, it was.
I know somewhere in the 90s is when I started shooting Browning and I I think I was probably 90 90, 91, 92 somewhere in there because they made an Olympic recurve for a short amount of time. And they had the machined riser. I shot the Browning limbs that came with it. They gave, at the time before that, I was shooting a Hoyt gold medalist. And then
Mhm.
Browning came to the archery shop that my dad worked at, and they saw me shooting outside while the rep was there. And the uh, the rep said, saw me shooting my Olympic recurve, and he said to my dad, he goes, "Does your son compete?" And he was like, "Yeah." He goes, "He's actually at that point in time, a couple years state champion.
Mhm.
And he was like, "Oh, well, was he interested in shooting one of our recurves?" And I guess this was like when they first came out with an ILF machined riser that matched their current compound risers. So
Mhm.
really, it wasn't. It just a little bit longer. It was a standard 25 inch or so riser, and it was fun. I mean, it was neat to see these. Like, and that point in time, like Browning was like they were a big brand in archery. At the
Yep.
same time, so was Yamaha. Yamaha was pretty big in Olympic recurve,
Yep.
and which I shot. That's the bow I shot after that. But you know, it's so crazy though to think back, like Golden Eagle, Jennings, Browning, PSE. What are some of the other ones that were, well, obviously Hoyt, still around to this day. Oneida.
Mhm.
How have they survived for so long? It's just it's crazy to think like some of these companies and Bear really has been around forever. Like it's just wild to me that some of these companies have survived as long as they had. And then High Country and Martin came out. I think Martin was one of the earlier ones too, because I know they have some patents on certain aspects of the compound, and I think it's the cams and whatever. Um, but to look back like through the years and realize how many of these bow companies still exist. High Country came out. I think Matthews bought High Country. Is that correct? Am I remembering that correctly?
I don't know if
I
Matthews bought High Country, but
I thought they did. I could be wrong, or I thought Matthews was kind of derived from High Country or something like that. I don't know all the details, but
Matthews was started by Matt McPherson.
yeah,
Okay.
I knew
Okay.
that.
And Matt rented his first building from my cousin in Minnesota. So he came out with this bow, and he had no sales rep. Everything was print advertising, and his big deal was high let off,
Yeah.
and that's what sold. And of course, it went on to be a big company.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And
So you were
Matt,
shooting. I got all these pictures. I'm gonna put them in this episode. We probably don't have about 5 or 10 minutes left, but so you were shooting just because I have a deadline and I have to go umpire a varsity softball game is what I have to do, Dick. That's what I have to go do. But anyways, so you were shooting Olympic recurve with a release against compound shooters.
correct.
How did that go?
You see the trophy?
I saw the trophy. I saw the trophy, but I need you to say it.
That was it. You know, the everybody there was upset because I won, and they were like, you're just happy that, or should be glad that everybody shot bad." And, you know, that's not. One guy was Mike and Faye Benny, which they were shooters. She was really good. Mike was not, and I had shot with them in California at the at the Southwest Sectional, and I had a brand new what was it, Black Widow,
Oh yeah.
and I had no sight settings. So the first day I shot five something, but it wasn't good enough. There were three or four guys ahead of me, and so I was in a group with Mike and Faye, not with the top guys. And the second day was a hunter spot, and now I had sight settings. And the last target was a 32 fan, and I put one in each white dot. And the guys that were standing there wanting to know how I was doing because they were finished. And Mike says, "I don't care what you shot, you lost," because I had shot clean.
Really?
And so they knew that. Well, one of the people that was complaining a few years later that I won the field with a release and recurve was Mike Benny.
Mm.
What are you talking about? So he was in the archery shop. I was running Henderson at the time. And I told him, I says, all right. I put my release on the counter. I said, I won't shoot this anymore. I says, and he said, well, you got state targets coming up in a month. And I says, I'll beat you with my fingers.
And he was shooting compound and release.
Uh-huh. And I did.
That's incredible. I love it.
Well, recurve, no clicker, and fingers
And a sight, as
and
they
a
both
sight.
are. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, when did the class switch? Like when did that class become separated? Is it because of you? Or is it just in general? Like
No,
when did that change?
they got better and better, and the top shooters, it wasn't even a contest. As the compounds got better and people made better releases and stuff like that, it
Hmm.
wasn't even a contest. And probably I say late '60s, early '70s was when it all started to change. And they were still fighting over it, but what are you going to do? you know,
Yeah. When do you think Barebow went back? Like when do you think that Barebow was re-implemented, or was it still existence at work? No sites, you
yeah.
know, all
Once the
that
site-
stuff.
once the sites came in, Barebow almost went away. It really did.
Mm-hmm.
People like Frank Gandy and stuff, they were the ones that kept it. And he was winning NFA and shooting, you know, unbelievable back then. He's
Mm-hmm.
one of the best, or if not the best, I've ever seen shooting barebow. Okay.
Really?
And yeah, didn't have any of the fancy stuff. There were times when we said, Frank, at least put a sight on so it looks like you're shooting one to make us feel better.
What's his last name?
Frank Gandy.
Gandy.
Yeah.
I have to look him up in some of the records.
Out of Florida. Yeah, he was unbelievable.
Really.
Um,
I
Yeah.
know like when we talk about when me and Demmer and a few guys get into like some barebow history stuff, we talk about Alan Eagleton a lot, who still shoots to this day. Alan Eagleton. I want to say I want to say like maybe he's somewhere in the West Coast. I'm not sure where he's from. I don't think it's Colorado. I feel like it's like Utah or something, but maybe it's California, Arizona. I don't know. But like he's one of the had a lot of records, held a lot of records for a long time, or still does in some cases. But shooting like our version of barebow, your ILF riser, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but it's funny though that like barebow almost went away, and it's really barebow started to come back before Rob really dove into it with the classic. But like Rob was definitely the Rob Koffold, for those who end up listening to this recording, was
Yeah.
definitely like what's the word? He catapulted Barebow again. You
Well,
know.
he's one of the guys that, you know, can shoot, and did shoot Olympic recurve
Hmm.
very well. One
Hmm.
of the top shooters. And he'd pick up a bow and shoot a barebow with anybody. And he was just that good. All right. He still is,
No,
but uh,
absolutely.
but not like he was. I mean, none of us were
No,
anyway.
100%.
Of course, he shoots a compound for hunting sometimes.
But he's
And
been hunting traditional the last 5 years. Like he's
I,
ever
I
ever
know.
since he had his some of the health stuff, and he came
Yeah.
back and he started shooting recurve because I hunted with him a handful of times while he was hunting with it, and he's killed deer with it. So like it's
Oh, yeah.
not it's like riding a bike for him, I'm sure. I know like when I met Rob, I was probably 9 years old. So Rob, he might have been in his late 20s, 30s, somewhere in there, because he had taken over the shop. He sold me my first Olympic recurve riser, gave me my first lesson. I was shooting your tab, I was shooting a Cavalier tab.
Mm.
Not your tab, but yes, your tab. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, Go ahead.
No, I mean, guys like Rob are ones that kept this industry alive. You know,
Yeah.
if you want to look at the history of the industry, um, Easton Aluminum, Earl Hoyt, Fred Bear, Ben Pearson.
Hmm.
Those are the ones. Of course, Fred Bear from the hunting standpoint of it.
Right.
Uh, Ben Pearson also hunting, but he's the one that actually uh, manufactured bow in mass so that the average guy could afford one. Okay.
Hmm.
There was a time when the Bear Archery catalog and the Ben Pearson catalog were the same, just a
Really?
different name on it. And it was Ben Pearson bows and Fred Bear accessories.
That makes a lot of sense, actually, because they looked awfully similar for a long time.
Yeah. And uh,
Huh.
and Fred started making bows.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
and
I watched the documentary on bear archery. I think it's on YouTube somewhere, and it goes through like the how bear archery started and how Fred Bear was like probably the first mass-produced recurve bow, I think,
uh-huh.
right? Like mass-produced as in like it was being sold everywhere and shipped everywhere, like his whole process of distributing them, I should say.
That was Ben Pearson.
Was it Ben? So Ben's the one that actually
Yeah.
did took over that portion of it.
Yeah. He was the guy that came up with how to make that stuff.
That's
You know,
crazy.
I worked for them for several years and in the old factory in Pine Bluff and, spent a lot of time rummaging around an old building number one to, see what's there and, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Um, but interesting, a lot of interesting history there. So if you want to have a little more history, I'll tell you about this guy
I can't see it. Hold it up to the there. Look. Oh, okay. What do we got there? I can't read out what it says.
called Archery Sales and Service, a guy named George Levitt,
Okay.
and he's out of Chicago.
Okay.
Okay. Um,
We got a couple minutes yet. We got about
all
10
right.
minutes.
Okay. I was working for Hoy or Wing, and I was running around the country trying to teach all the AMF Voight salesmen how to sell archery. And we
Hmm.
went to this shop. I knew George Levitt because he would sell monster pins to raise funds for the U.S. teams.
Hmm.
And I went to a shop, never been to a shop, but I knew him. All right. Crusty old guy. And he kept a list of what was wrong with every manufacturer. And we walked in with the wing company and he had a big list. He'd never seen a wing rep,
I
right?
remember. I remember Wing too. Yeah. Okay.
And he just raked us over the coals, right? And when he got done, I says, George, you about done? He says, yeah. And I says to the guy, I knew the drill. I says, next door is a bakery. We'll get some bagels. And when he came back, we were in the back writing an order and drinking CC and bagels and cream cheese. As I was getting ready to leave on the pegboard, he had one of the Bear 4-arrow quivers that
Okay.
with the leather back, and I says, and it said $7. And I says, I'll take that. And I gave him the $7. And I walked out and I thought, man, I made a deal, right? And I get to the car and I forgot something. I came back and here's George hanging up another one that said $8. I said, okay, tell me the story. So he opened up the trap door and we went down in the basement. The entire basement was filled with nothing but brand new Bear stuff from the 50s. Okay,
Really?
and in early 60s. And I looked around, he had 30-gallon drums full of brass screw-on field points and 30-gallon drums full of bare razor heads and all these bows. And I said, "What's the deal?" He said, "Well, I got a call from Fred one day, and he was going out of business and wanted to know if I wanted to buy something." And I says, "All right." He said, "Well, bring a trailer, we'll load it up." So he drove up to Grayling. He bought it all,
Oh my gosh, no way.
everything he had. And that put Bear back in business.
No way.
Fact.
That's crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Most people don't. And if
So
you hadn't,
Bear was essentially gonna fold.
yeah, you were done.
And
This guy saved him.
this guy who owned an archery shop in what state did you say it was?
Chicago, Illinois.
Chicago, Illinois, that's right.
Yeah.
Was friends with Fred
Yep.
and went up there and said, here's some money. I'll take all this old stuff.
Yep.
I'll make my money back. That's incredible.
And he says the best deal I ever made in my life.
I'm
He said,
sure.
"I paid $10 for this bow and I'm selling it for 50."
Imagine how much stuff that worth in some regards what it could be worth today,
Yeah.
especially if it was like part of that load of equipment, which highly doubt that like serial numbers and stuff is documented, but maybe it is, who knows? But
I,
like,
I I wasn't smart enough to buy a bunch of it myself. Of course,
yeah,
I probably couldn't afford it back then
yeah.
either, but and it was a kind of interesting deal.
That's
So
incredible, Dick. I had no idea about that. I met for them, and we'll close it. We'll close down with this because I definitely want to continue this conversation. I met Fred Bear at the Atlantic City Archery Classic. My first time around. Um, we shot in the Atlantic City Convention Center, which I think has since been torn down. And
mhm.
you know what made me think of it is they showed Bow Junkie showed a video of somebody must have shot an arrow like up into the wall at Vegas this year.
Mhm.
And he said, you know, and I don't know the truth to this. That as far as I've been around archery, that's always happened in some capacity. But,
Yep.
you know, Greg tried to say that they don't do that in Europe and stuff like that. I don't know if that's true, um but it reminded me of the Atlantic City because you go to Atlantic City and there's a big, huge mezzanine that would go all the way around, and you would see arrows into the seats, sticking in the wood crown, the crown molding, and into the seats in the mezzanine. Because you shot that round was like a 60, 50, 40 round is
Yeah.
what it was. And but Bear Archery was always there. They always had a stand set up, and I took a picture with him, and I have no idea where it's at, which is heartbreaking for me. But that my dad took it, and he passed away like 2 years later.
Yeah. Fred, once he met you, he never forgot your name. He was one of those guys, right? And I knew him probably from 1960 on.
Hmm.
I shot Coble Hall shoot and met him there. I'm going to send you one more picture here
Okay.
because relative relevant to what's going on right now.
Yeah, Fred died April 27th, 1988,
Right.
which was like a week after the classic, a week or two after the Atlantic City Archery Classic, because it was um he died right after it. What did you just send me?
You see that silver part in the front? It's round.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's an insulation shroud sitting on the moon on a
Okay.
on the seismometer. I made that.
What? Listen, we're not going to get into the details of this. We're going to wait and come back. This is how we're starting the next episode. How
But
you
that
ended up on the moon is crazy. Well, not you personally, but what
anyway,
that's
what's
crazy. So
now
that is,
going on?
and I see where you're going with what's happening right now.
Right.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. All
That
right.
was 1969.
1969. Okay, so we're finishing up the 60s and we're gonna go into the 70s next episode. I'll reach out to you privately. We'll set that up. Maybe we'll do it next week. Um, but thanks. I mean, this has been so much fun. I enjoy history. I love archery. It's very hard, and I may do this. I might have to. There's a couple other gentlemen I'd love to talk to and bring into this conversation, but like separate episodes. Like Larry Wise is another one. Larry's
Yeah.
such a good storyteller, and
Yep,
you know,
he is.
his forte is definitely compound, but he shot recurve too. He shot it all. So um, maybe I'll maybe as we get into it, maybe I'll even bring you two together on an episode. That would be fun. So. All right, Dick, I'm gonna let you go. I have to go get ready for a wet and rainy softball game here in Pennsylvania. So, but I appreciate your time. This is a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
All
I'll
right.
I am definitely looking forward to finding out how you ended up with having a product on the moon.
All
All right, Dick. We'll talk to you
right.
later. See ya.
All right. Bye.
Bye.